able to get them up here and talk about it. So there you go. But Tyler owns Analytive, really good guy, knows his stuff when it comes to Google Analytics and websites. So be sure and take notes because you're going to get some good stuff today. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and speak at the WordPress meetup. I've taken a lot from it, and so it's fun to give back once in a while. So today I get to talk about Google Analytics. So just by a show of hands, how many of you use Google Analytics or at least have it installed maybe on your website right now? Okay. And how many of you have, besides just copying over the code and putting it on or copying over the little UA number, how many of you actually use it? You regularly look at reports or set up goals or anything like that? Jeremy.
Thanks to you, Tyler.
Okay, good. Good. Well, so today I'm going to talk about Google Analytics for Business. Now, just for some background, well, let me start. I think, who am I? Founder at Analytive, studied entrepreneurship, Google Analytics certified. But basically, the part that you care about today is I get to work with all kinds of clients, startups, small businesses, folks out in Silicon Valley, Denver, local companies here in town. I've worked with a lot of them doing consulting on Google Analytics and web analytics in particular. So today, I'm not going to give you kind of a tutorial. They offer classes on that. If you want to find that information, you can go online. What I really want to do is show you what I think are some of the most valuable things, right? So the tool is complex. There's a lot that goes into it. But at the end of the next 30 minutes or so, I want to give you everything you need to start using it in your business. That's my goal. So there's a lot of things we won't address, but I'm going to try and really sort through all the clutter and hopefully give you something that's valuable. So let's get started. So why do we use analytics? So just for some clarity, analytics, Google Analytics in particular, is a tool that Google has basically given to us for free. They want you to use it because they ultimately want you to use AdWords so that you pay money, right? Or some of their display ads or YouTube ads. But it's a tool that allows you to track user behavior on your website, right? It allows you to experiment rather than guess. So we want to know, so for example, if you're doing a pay-per-click campaign, right? And when I say pay-per-click, I mean like Google ads or maybe Facebook ads. You want to know if your ads are converting, right? You want to know if it costs you $2 per click. You want to know what the value is that you're getting. Because if it's less than $2, it's not a very smart business decision, right? Analytics is not SEO. Sometimes I think people get confused and say, well, isn't Google Analytics SEO? No. Analytics is simply a tool that allows you to measure whatever marketing you happen to be doing. Okay? So if you're doing SEO, you can use analytics to track some of that. If you're doing pay-per-click or Facebook ads, you're using social media, we can use analytics to track a lot of those things. Okay? Is that clear? Any questions on that stuff? I want to make sure we kind of start at square one before we get going. Okay? Good. The other thing that we can do then is where analytics gets really powerful is it helps us to optimize virtually everything. And what I mean by that is we take the data that we get and we make decisions around our business or around our blog or around our product or whatever that is. If we're not actually taking that data and using it to help make decisions, it's useless, right? We could have the best data in the world. There's no value of having the code on the site unless you actually look at it and understand what users are doing, okay? There are millions and millions and millions and millions of websites that have the Google Analytics code, but there are a handful of people who actually use it to make business decisions. Those are the people that are using it successfully, okay? Cool. So how does Google Analytics work? So what happens is in the head of your website, you add a snippet of code that looks something like this, right? So when you create a brand new Google Analytics account, it'll give you a snippet of code that it asks you to embed on the head of your website. So if your theme allows it, you can copy and paste that into the head between the opening and closing head HTML tag, or you can use plugins. There's Monster Insights is probably one of the most popular for Google Analytics. But this piece of code, right, needs to go on every single page of your website. Because every time that a page loads, that code fires. And it basically checks in with the Google Analytics servers. Okay? So the collection part of it is actually pretty simple, right? Just copy and paste. Or sometimes it's even easier if you use a plugin, you just fill in a unique ID code. So then what do we collect? What kind of data is Google Analytics collecting for us? It collects the website information, particularly the URL, right? It knows what page we're on, or the user is on. it connects or collects information about the browser. So what type of device, right? Is it an iPhone? Is it an Android? What version is it? Is it Windows? Which browser? Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer? The referring source, which is really valuable to us if we're doing marketing. So where was the traffic coming from? Was it coming from Facebook? Was it coming from Twitter? Was it from an organic search? Was it from any number of other sources, maybe our pay-per-click ad campaigns? And we can also then input custom data, right? So this can interface with your membership software or even your e-commerce site. So you can track the value and where people are coming. So then all of this data is sent to Google Analytics. It's sent to their servers for processing. Okay, that makes sense? Cool, good. So I will tell you that really there are 2 steps to setting up Google Analytics. So the first one we talked about, and that is putting the code on your site, right? On every single page of your website, okay? That's step 1. And step 2 then is setting up goals, right? The number one thing that I see wrong with every analytics setup is that people don't use goals, okay? And I'm going to show you how to set up a goal today. We're going to talk about what those are. But goals are a conversion or a specific action, right? So there's a good chance, especially if you run a business of any sort or even a nonprofit, that there are certain actions you want people to take on your website, right? If you're a nonprofit, maybe it's a donation, maybe it's sign up to volunteer, maybe it's sign up for an email newsletter. If you're a business, it could be make a purchase, fill out a form, contact you, right? There are certain actions that you want people to take. If we want to get real good data out of Google Analytics, the number one thing I recommend is to set up goals. And I like to divide goals, I call them conversions, but into macro and micro conversions. Okay? So what are macro conversions? Macro conversions are anything that lead to real revenue for your business. Okay? So that could be making a purchase if you're an e-commerce store, right? Where you track exactly when somebody makes a purchase. Maybe it's visit a store location. Maybe it's sign up to volunteer, download a coupon, make a donation, or maybe they even pick up the phone. I track macro goals or macro conversions. What I tell people, they ask me, well, what do I track? This is it, right? Macro, particularly. That's the closest thing to revenue for your business, right? If it's direct revenue, great. Or if it could be a lead gen site, maybe it's filling out a contact form, something like that, okay? So then I also have micro conversions. So a micro conversion might be signing up for an email list, engaging on social media, downloading a white paper. This is something where we're not necessarily making a purchase, right? But it's on the way. It's giving us permission, or they're giving us permission to market to them in the future. Okay? Does that make sense? So really, as you think about your Google Analytics, there's the 2 things, right? Get the code on the site, every single page. Because if you don't have it on every page, you're going to have holes in your analytics and you're going to have not so great data coming in, right? It'll mess everything up. So the code needs to be on every page, and you need to set up goals. I'm telling you, if you do that, you're going to be ahead of 90% of people who use Google Analytics regularly. Promise you that. Cool? Does that make sense?
So if you were to have a definition on micro, could it be they're giving us permission to market to them further? Is that like
yeah, I think that's a good definition. Yeah, it's an action that they take that makes it likely that they'll make a purchase in the future. So it's kind of a complicated definition, right? The number one I track is signing up for an email list, right? Whenever I can track that, because then they're on your email list, you can engage with them with your newsletter, future content, market to them. But yeah, you could any of those. So good question. Okay, well let's go ahead and bounce into analytics. But I wanted to talk about this before we get started. So what I have is I have a couple accounts set up that actually have real Google Analytics user data here. I think I can go full screen. Okay. All right. So you guys have probably seen a report like this before, right? This is what you normally see when you log into Google Analytics, okay? So I'm going to assume, just for our discussion here, that you have Google Analytics set up on your website. Okay, you follow the things that we talked about. We'll talk about goals. We're going to get to that. But I want to address some of the common questions that I get. And so we'll start with definitions. Okay? So we have sessions, we have users, and we have page views. Okay? I get a lot of questions on this, and it's super, super confusing. So let me do my best to address it. And I'll do it with a story, right? So we have users, sessions, and page views. Okay, so say you have a brand new website. Okay? You install Google Analytics code, you set it up, and I come to your website, right? And I come today. So now I visit your website, and while I'm there, I visit your homepage, I visit your About Us page, and I visit your contact page, and then I leave. Okay? Does that make sense? Come to your site, visit 3 pages, then I leave. So I'm now one user. Okay? I've created one session, and I've given you 3 page views. Okay? Now, let's say tomorrow, right? No other data has happened. Tomorrow, I come back to your site, right? On the same device, same computer. I haven't cleared my cookies or anything for the sake of this argument. I'm still one user, but now I've created 2 sessions, right? Because I've come back. I've started a new session. While I'm there, let's say I, again, visit 3 pages. I visit the home page, the About Us, the contact page, and then I leave. Now, I have 6 page views. Okay? So a user, whenever somebody visits a website, there's a cookie that tracks them. And so a cookie for users lasts, I think it's like 6 months by default, right? It's a really long time. So if somebody goes to your website and then a week later comes back, they're still going to be one user, right? And that assumes they use the same computer or the same device, right? They're still the same user. But a session is an instance where they visit your site, right? They could visit multiple pages, but that's one session, okay? So a session, I think, expires by default. The cookie expires after about 30 minutes, right? So if somebody visits your site and they go away for 30 minutes, then that cookie expires. Page views, that happens whenever anybody loads a page, right? So you could have, if somebody visits 7 different pages, you're going to have 7 different page views, right? If somebody hits refresh, that's going to be a new page view, okay? Does that make sense? It's a lot easier to explain it that way than try and define them otherwise. So again, 2 days, 1 user, 2 sessions, 6 page views. Cool. So then the rest of the metrics are mostly based on these. So we have the pages per session. So this says, okay, on average, how many pages did somebody visit on each session? This is useful to us because it tells us effectively, how many pages they're visiting per session, right? If it's just 1, that's not very good. In this case, for this particular website, it's 3.3. Not bad, not great. Session duration, that's how long somebody is on your website, right? That's how long each of these sessions are on average, okay? So for this particular website, 3 minutes and 1 second, okay? Bounce rate, people ask me a lot about bounce rate. Bounce rate is when somebody comes to the site and then they leave without doing anything. They don't visit another page. They just come, they look at one thing, and then they leave. That's called a bounce. Okay? So if your bounce rate's really high, so we're at about 55%, 56% of the people that come to this website come, just visit one page, and then they leave. Okay? And then the percent of new sessions. So this says, okay, what percentage of the sessions are from new people, right? Are new sessions. Okay? Does that make sense? Cool. Helpful? Okay. So this is the first report I always look at, right, is the audience overview. Okay. So on the left side of analytics here, we have a few different tabs. I'm not going to talk about customization or real-time today. Real-time effectively just gives you the same data that's going to be in these other 4 tabs that we're going to talk about, but it's what's happening on your website right now. Okay. So first of all, we have audience, which is where we are right now. So we're in the audience overview. That tells us about our audience, about our users, okay? What devices they're on, where they're located. There's all kinds of data we can pull, and I'm not going to get into all of it, but the audience overview is a report I always look at. Then we can look at acquisition, okay? So acquisition is where visitors come from. It's how they get to our site. If you do any kind of marketing, if you're doing social media marketing, you're doing pay-per-click advertising, you're doing SEO, you'll spend a lot of time, ideally, in the acquisitions tab, okay? Because that's going to tell you where your traffic's coming from. Behavior is going to be what people do on the website, okay? Do they visit a lot of pages? Do they visit a few pages? What's their behavior when they're on the website? And then we'll finally talk about conversions, which I addressed earlier. This is when we set up goals. It gives us conversion data, okay? So the reports that I typically use for a small business are these 4, and we just saw the first one of them. Okay? Actually, I lied. Audience overview is 1, so that's the first one. But I want to talk about a couple different ones. Okay? Let me bounce back over here to analytics. So the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at acquisition. Okay, so we know what our audience is. We have our audience overview for this particular website right here. So now I want to know, where is our traffic coming from? Right? Wouldn't that be useful to know if you're in a business? Who is sending traffic to our website? So we can do that by going into our source medium right here. Okay? And I'm actually going to back this up for the past 2 months. Okay? So, where is our traffic coming from? Well, a bunch of it, and I'm sorry that's really small, but that says m.facebook.com. So for this particular website, we were running some Facebook advertising. Right? So in the past 2 months, we got almost 400 visits from our Facebook advertising. Okay? Right behind that is Google organic search. Right? So the source is the particular website, so in this case, Facebook. And then the medium, which is over here, is the channel. Right? So this is a referral. So this traffic was referred from Facebook. This is technically a referral from Google, but since it's search, we call it organic. Okay, it's organic search. Yahoo Organic being organic. So you can see that really on this website, I have two primary referral sources, right? One is Facebook and one is Google. What I would recommend is if you're doing any marketing, spend a lot of time in this report, right? In acquisition, because you want to understand where your users are coming from. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions?
Yeah, so you said
Yeah.
acquisition. So I've got my Google Analytics open.
Sure.
Where did you go to get that shown?
Yes, if you go to all traffic.
All traffic, okay.
Yeah, so hidden drop down.
Okay.
And then source medium.
Source
right?
medium. Okay, thank you.
And let me show you a cool little thing. If you have Google Analytics open right now and you're tracking with me, you can actually hit this button right up here at the top that says shortcut. It's really small. And you can create a shortcut that'll show up here in your customizations menu. Okay, so I just created this all traffic shortcut. Let me show you how to do that again. So if you're following along, this will be really useful because it'll allow you to get back to these very quickly. Okay, and you can do this on any report. So if you open the report, in our case, all traffic, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. There's a little shortcut button. If you hit that, that's kind of like bookmarking this particular view. Okay, so you can add that, and then what it'll do is it'll show up here in your customizations menu. Okay, just like that. Cool. Other questions? We're moving really fast. Normally I teach a 7-hour course on this, so. Yeah?
I know if I'm getting ahead, but do the metrics have any relevance for searches, search engines? Like if Google sees that the average time that people spend on your site goes up to 10 minutes, do you rank higher in your search?
Yeah, good question. So do like bounce rate and metrics like that have any impact on SEO? The jury's out. Some people suggest that if somebody clicks through a search, right? So if you show up in the top 10, you're say number 5, and somebody clicks through to your website, then they immediately bounce back out to the search results page. They don't find what they're looking for. Some say that that will knock you down. As far as Google actually using this data in search, we don't really know. They say no. I don't know for sure. What I would say though is that a site with good UX, good user experience, right, where people want to stay, where they're visiting multiple pages, a mobile-friendly site, will likely rank better in search. Okay, and what factors they actually use to measure that, I'm not 100% sure. So good question though. Okay, so audience overview, a report that you have to look at. Acquisition, all traffic, source medium. Okay, another really useful report. Again, these are the reports that whenever I work with a small business, I teach them how to get here, because it has the biggest impact and kind of give you the most information. So if you go to behavior, if you're on the left-hand side, and go to all pages, what this does is it shows you the most popular pages on your website. Okay, super useful, right?
Is that an acquisition again, or is that?
So we're in behavior.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to behavior and then go to site content, that drop down and go to all pages, it'll show you the most popular pages on your website. Okay? So if you're blogging, right? If you're blogging and you want to know what your most popular blog posts are, this is where you would go. Okay? If you want to know what your most popular products are in your e-commerce store, again, you would go here. So in this case, I have a landing page that I built, that this is where the Facebook ads send, so that's why that's so high. Right under that, you'll see we just have that single slash, okay? So that single slash means it's the home page, right? So that's the page that there's nothing else on the URL, right? Just the slash. So it's the home page of your website. So in this case, so say blogging was a part of what I wanted to do. I can see that this blog, right, building a cheap in-ear monitor system for this particular website gets the most traffic. Not a ton, but it's one of the more common ones. Let me bounce over to a different website. So this is Mix Academy. Now I'm going to actually take you to analytive.com. So this is our website for our company. And I'm going to go to Site Content All Pages. Now we have one blog that gets us an inordinate amount of traffic, right? So now we're just looking at the last week. But I basically wrote a blog talking about what I just talked about over here with user sessions and page views. That gets us a huge amount of traffic. I mean, that's 500 visits, I think, this week, right? So for me, like, that's a really important piece of content, right? So I should, if I'm blogging as a part of my marketing strategy, maybe I want to write more content like that. Or how can I add something to this page, update it, leverage it to help grow my business, okay? If you don't, if you're doing any kind of marketing, any kind of promotion, you need to know what the most popular pages are on your site, particularly from organic search, okay? There's a good chance it'll be your homepage, right? But sometimes it's not. In this case, it's that one particular blog that gets us tons of traffic. I worked for a company here that had a really good events calendar, okay? And so the events calendar was the #1 drawer of traffic to the website, right? So the events calendar, it was expensive to maintain. It took a lot of labor and man hours to collect all the events. But from a promotion, from a marketing perspective, it made a lot of sense, okay? So what you need to figure out is, okay, what are the things on your site that are useful, that are valuable? And then you can take a look at them. So yeah, so again, behavior, site content dropdown, all pages. Similar to that, we can go to landing pages, which is 2 below that. Landing pages is similar to all pages, except it basically says, what is the first page that somebody gets to when they come to the website? In this case, it looks very similar, right? But what's the page that they land on, okay? So if you are doing SEO, this is a useful report for you, right? You want to know which page somebody lands on when they first show up. Cool? Cool. Good. All right. So finally, let's talk about conversions. Before I get into actually conversions, I want to show you how to set up a basic goal on your website, because I think that'll be really useful. And like I said, that's the thing that a lot of people miss. So I'm going to actually do that right now in real time. We're going to at least attempt it, setting up a goal. So I'm on analytive.com, and let me show you how this particular goal is going to work, right? So I have this page on our WordPress site that uses, I think this is Ninja Forms, but you could do it with any form plugin. And it's our fake contact form that we're going to use. And so I want to know whenever anybody fills this out, right? I'm going to say that's going to be my goal that I'm going to set up for the website, okay? So we have the fake contact form. So the way I'm going to track that is I'm going to set it up so that after somebody fills out this form, they're going to get redirected to a thank you page. Okay, so I have a fake thank you page set up here. And this is an entirely new page on a new URL, right? We're not doing Ajax or anything crazy where it submits inside the page. It actually redirects me to a new URL, okay? And this is going to be key to setting up our goal. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go to Goals, and I'm actually going to create a new goal in Google Analytics, okay? So there's a lot of options where we can set it up for revenue or acquisition or inquiry. And just to be clear, where I went is down here on, if you hit the little gear, it'll take you to the admin tab, okay? And then over here on the right-hand side, so I'm in the view, I'm going to click on the flag where it says goals right there. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Maybe out a touch. Okay, I'm going to create a new goal. Okay, and in this case, I'm just going to select custom. Hit continue, because basically that screen matters very little in setting up a goal. But here's what I'm going to call it. Fake contact form 2. Okay, and now it gives me several different types of goals that I can set up. So one is a destination goal. So the way we use a destination goal is that whenever anybody visits a particular page on your website, in our case we have a thank you page set up, that fake thank you page. Whenever anybody hits that page, I want to register that as a goal. Okay, does that make sense? That's the easiest way, and that's for most businesses what I recommend. Right? You can do e-commerce, you can do some more complicated setups, but for most businesses, you want to track a particular action. So the easiest way to do that is to make sure that when that action is completed, that they visit a thank you page. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So we're actually going to set up a destination goal. I'll talk briefly about some other ones. So there's duration. So remember on the front end on the audience overview, we said, okay, I think average for the last site was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So we can set it up so if somebody's on the site for 5 minutes, that would register as a goal. Okay? Frankly, I don't use that one really ever. I'm not sure why you would want to do that. It doesn't necessarily make you money from a business perspective if somebody's on the site for 5 minutes. Maybe if you're Wikipedia or you're a publisher, it might make sense, but for most businesses, it doesn't make a lot of sense to set up that goal, in my opinion. You could also do pages per session, right? So this says, okay, I want to register a goal whenever anybody visits 4 pages per session or 5 pages per session, right? Again, I find that not super useful because I don't care if they read every single blog I have. If they don't fill out a contact form so that I can follow up with them, it's not useful to me in my business, okay? Or we can do event, and I don't have time to get into events, but we can actually set up events so that if somebody watches a video, enters an email address, does any of those things kind of on the micro conversion side that we talked about, we can set up events. But for the sake of moving forward in our presentation, I'm going to actually show you how to set up a destination goal. Okay, so I'm going to fire destination. We're going to hit continue.
Question back here.
Yeah.
Can the destination page be another site completely different, or does it have to be within does it have to have that Google Analytics?
Yeah, good question. Can it be a different site? It has to have your Google Analytics tag on it. Okay, so generally no, right? If you took them off-site to PayPal or to somewhere else, you're not going to really be able to track those conversions. That's a good question, though. Yeah, so it has the thank you page, just like every other page, has to have your Google Analytics tag on it, right? And what we assume, again, is that every page in the funnel, the thank you page, the checkout page, all of those pages need to have that script tag that we talked about. Otherwise, it's not going to load. That's a good question. That's very, very important.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you prep that thank you page by blocking it from search engines or anything so that you don't get people stumbling across it from Google?
Yeah, usually I block it, but honestly, unless there's a lot of content on that page, like a whole couple paragraphs, you will almost never get traffic. It's not linked anywhere off the menu, so in a way it's sort of an orphaned page. So even if you don't block it using your robots or whatever, I still very, very rarely have issues with that. That's a good question. Okay, so we set up, where were we? Okay, cool. So we have our thank you page here. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this part of the URL right here. I wish I could zoom in, but I can't on that, unfortunately. But we're going to take everything after the trailing slash, and we are going to go in here to analytics. Okay, oops. And I'm just going to copy and paste that. Copy. I'm going to paste it in there just like that. And I'm going to say it's not case sensitive. The other thing is we're saying, okay, it equals to. If you have any kind of form or more of a complex plugin where you're passing variables through the URL at this point, you could set it to begins with. Okay, for any of you developers, if it has question mark and then has unique data, okay, you can just set it to begins with. It's still going to fire. Okay, you can assign it a value. This is a dollar value. Or we can set it as part of the funnel. We're not actually going to do that right now. But we're going to go ahead and then hit save. Okay? And now we've effectively set up our first goal. Right? So let me go ahead and I want to try this now. Right? Because one of the things that I like to do is anytime I set up a goal, I want to try it. I want to make sure it works. Because it sucks to spend a month, right, thinking you're collecting data and then realize you haven't got any. So I'm actually going to open up Safari. So I'm going to back out of here. A brand new window, okay? And I'm going to go to my fake contact form page, okay? So I'm logged out. The reason that I opened a new browser is sometimes when you're logged in, depending on how you have your code installed, if you use like Monster Insights, occasionally it'll block it if it registers you as logged in. Plus I have an ad blocker and some other things that sometimes interfere, right? So now I'm on the fake contact form page. I'm going to enter my information. Okay. and this is a test. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have this over here on this side. And then I'm actually, I know we said we weren't really going to use real time a lot, but I'm going to bounce back over here to real time. And we are going to see what happens. Conversions. Okay, so right now there's one user on the site, probably me, right, from a desktop. And I'm going to zoom out quite a bit so we can, there we go. Okay, so let's see what happens. So now I've set it up. Let's see if I did it right. Cross your fingers. There it is, right? And it actually registered these 3 goals right here. Okay, because I've used this goal before, so I have multiple ones set up. But the one I created was this number 3 right here, this fake contact form, number 2. And so you see that that just registered as a goal. That's all there is to it to set up basic goals, right? So if you work with personal trainers, if you work with chiropractors, if you work with anybody who's filling out a website or a form on a website, and that's one of the main contact ways, always, always, always set up goals, right? If you're using an e-commerce store, I'm not going to get too deep into e-commerce, or really, I don't really have much time to talk about it in depth. But there's ways that you can input the data, right? If you use Shopify, if you use even WooCommerce, a lot of those integrate directly, right? And it actually sends real e-commerce data, so you know where people came from, and you also can see which products they purchased and the total value that somebody provided. So, cool. Well, good. So that's a really, really quick crash course in Google Analytics. So I saved the last 15 minutes or so. Let's do questions, right? Because we covered a lot. So if you want me to go over something again, if you have a particular question about your instance, let's do that. Yeah?
As far as WooCommerce goes, is there any additional tracking information you have to turn on in Google Analytics in order to track the WooCommerce items?
Yes, potentially. So good question. So if you use WooCommerce or Shopify, do you have to do anything beyond just installing the code? If we go to e-commerce settings, you need to make sure you just flip e-commerce on. Okay, so I went to the admin panel, go to e-commerce settings, make sure you turn e-commerce on. Okay, and then it'll say, do you want to use enhanced e-commerce? Sure, yes. All right, enable both of them, and then if your system is sending data, right, it'll start registering. Because right now, basically, it's disabled all of the e-commerce data. And so even if you're sending it to the servers, it's not going to process it. Okay? So yeah, so if you enable that, I don't know what you need to do on the WooCommerce side. Typically, I believe there's probably you need to copy the code in, or there's probably a switch somewhere in WordPress that would allow you to enable WooCommerce. You need to make sure that's enabled. But on the Google Analytics side, that's basically the one thing you need to do. And then just make sure that the data is getting sent from your website to Google Analytics.
They also have a free, if you just Google WooCommerce, Google Analytics, they have a free plugin that kind of sends some more tracking data as long as you have your Google Analytics installed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give maybe some examples of decisions that you've advised clients to make based on this kind of data?
Yeah. I do a lot with pay-per-click, right? So pay-per-click advertising, Google AdWords, Google Display Ads. I actually, because they're both Google products, there's ways to integrate them very closely. So I can actually see my ad campaign data, not just what people are doing, but what kind of money is being spent, and which ad campaigns are driving the most revenue. And so then I make decisions about which ad campaigns we kill, right? Which ones we double down on, we spend more money on, based upon this as well. A recent one with Mixcademy, for example, which is the first site we looked at, I was doing paid Facebook advertising, and I have a goal set up so that I won't talk too deep about the funnel, but I have a goal set up. So if I go to overview here, right, we're looking at the past 2 months. So I have, in the past 2 months, 82 goal completions worth $130. It's actually more than that, but so 4 of them were paid signups. So I have several different goals set up. I basically have 5 goals on this site, right? So I have 4 different membership types, okay? And then I have a sign up for the online newsletter, okay? And so I was driving, using ad campaigns, I drive traffic to this site. So it led me, in this case, to 4 monthly members, 1 site license member, and 77 email signups. I use this data then when I go back into Facebook, or sometimes really with Facebook, I actually use some of Facebook's tracking tools. But to say, okay, which ads are working? Which are driving engagement? Right? If I'm paying for that, if I'm paying $5, $10, $50 a day to get the traffic, I want to make sure that I have the value. I also use a lot of the acquisition, or excuse me, the behavior site content when working in SEO. Right? This is one of the first places that I go and say, okay, I can sort by organic, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, so I can sort by source here. And now this is a little bit of a weird report. Typically I sort it in a different way. But I can see not only what the most popular pages are, but then where the top referring source is. Okay? So in this case, I know most of my traffic's coming from Facebook. But I know on the home page, most of the traffic's coming from Google. And so then I say, okay, what's driving traffic and then what's actually driving conversions? Because if I'm not getting conversions, then it's not worth it for me to be doing that marketing. I need to change something, right? Anytime you're paying for advertising, right? Marketing is always an investment. Okay? It's something that you use to grow your business. The only time it's not an investment is one, if you're not getting a return, so you're not getting conversions, or people treat it as an expense when they don't know if they're getting conversions. Okay? And so what we want to help you here is eliminate the second one. We want to get rid as much as possible of the don't know. Right? So if you're spending money on AdWords or on Facebook ads or even paying somebody to do social media, we want to reduce the unknowns as much as possible so that we can determine which marketing channels are really working. I worked with a lady who had an Instagram account. So she had a little small t-shirt business. I met with her through the SBDC. I do some consulting for them. And we sat down and I started talking to her about her marketing. And she used Instagram for a lot. And she had a few purchases that had come through, but was really looking to grow the business. And so I was talking to her. She said, Instagram's my main channel. I spend most of my time on there. I said, okay, great. Let's pull up your analytics. She had a Shopify store, so she turned on e-commerce. So the e-commerce data was put in. Out of, I think it was this particular lady out of the past year, she'd sold maybe $1,000 in t-shirts, so not a huge business. 0.03% of her revenue was in any way attributable to social media, right? It was a very, very small amount. Now, is that underrepresented? Potentially. But the fact is that she was spending a lot of time and a lot of effort on one channel that she thought was getting her a good return, but it turned out didn't seem to be doing quite what she wanted it to do, okay? So for her, it was, okay, one of two things. One, we need to work on that particular channel, and how do we drive more revenue through that channel? Or is it time to give up that channel or add another channel, whether it's paid, whether it's search, whether it's offline, whatever that happens to be. So, good question though. Yeah.
Does Google Analytics help you get an insight into keywords? How the person got to your site, or is that all top secret?
Yeah, good question. So like SEO related? Yeah, so the keyword data in Google Analytics is, because most searches now are done over SSL, right? They don't give us any of the true keyword data. So the keyword data, if I go in here, I'm just curious, let's actually look, right? If I go to our analytics site, let's see if I can find just real quick keyword, organic keywords. Let's just see what data I find.
Did you just type in organic keywords in the search?
Yeah, it's in a report somewhere under campaigns in this case, right? So in this case, most of it is not provided, right? And this is what I see on most sites, that the amount of data we actually get back is pretty negligible. So that's the bad side, right? The good side, though, is that I can see what pages are getting a lot of organic traffic, right? And a page is typically only about one topic in particular, right? So in this case, we have a blog of sessions and page views. So it doesn't necessarily matter the exact keyword, but I know the topics and I know sort of the keyword buckets, if you will, that are getting a lot of traffic. So I don't have the same level of keyword data that we used to have 5, 10 years ago, but I can see which pages are getting organic search traffic, and I can make my decision based upon those keyword buckets, right? So if the services page is getting a lot of information, or you have a particular services page about wastewater management, maybe you work for a company and they have a wastewater management page and that gets a lot of organic search traffic, I can be pretty sure that most of that organic search traffic is people searching for terms related to wastewater management. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's kind of a fine art. You're still kind of having to guess
Yeah.
a bit about what it is exactly they're hitting on. 'Cause
Yep.
If you're gonna create this copy,
Mm-hmm.
it's working, but can you make it better? I don't know, because it's
Sure.
working, people are coming,
Right.
is it already optimized or not?
Yeah. Yeah. So I track, when I do SEO, I actually track rankings with a couple other tools. So I do track rankings, and I compare the ranking data to the Google Analytics data. And that's how I estimate what keywords are sending pages. Now, it's not a perfect way to do it, right? So I know if a page is ranking really well for some of the keywords we're targeting, I can say, okay, we're now in the top 10, right? We're number 2 or number 3 for that keyword. And then I go into Google Analytics and I look at that page and say, am I getting a lot of organic traffic to that page, right? And so I can kind of fill in the gaps, but it is a little bit of educated guessing. Yeah.
What kind of tools do you use for that?
I use quite a few. Moz, Moz.com, M-O-Z, it used to be SEO Moz, and SEMrush.com, SEMrush. I use both of those for different SEO rank tracking, keyword research. There's a couple other tools I use for keyword research when I do that. Yeah, and so those are different than analytics, though. Those don't have code on your site, right? They're looking at the search engine results pages. They're tracking your rankings. So they're giving me data that Google Analytics isn't necessarily giving me. Analytics, this tool in particular, Google Analytics, is focused on your website and what people are doing on your website. Cool. Other questions or anything that you'd like to see?
When do you create a shortcut versus like, can't you create like your own dashboard?
Mm-hmm.
When do you do one or the other? Is like a shortcut part of a dashboard?
So a shortcut is, good question. So when you create a shortcut versus a dashboard, a shortcut, the way you create a shortcut is you take a report that already exists within Google Analytics and you just create a shortcut to it, okay? So it doesn't allow you to get super customized. Custom reports and dashboards, I create those anytime I'm doing work with a client and I want to track something specifically. So if I work with a client, I will often go through and I'll create an SEO dashboard that tracks most popular pages that are being visited from organic search. I'll create a social media dashboard that'll have any social metrics, right? Traffic from social media. I'll create kind of an MV, what I call MVC, most valuable content. So what's the content that's driving the most revenue for the business or the most goals and conversions for the business? So all of those, I can get to them here in the custom reports, but it's a pain, right? It takes a lot of time and I have to really go in. Plus, it gives me lots and lots of data I mainly don't care about. With a dashboard, I can just drill down very deep on the data that I care about, even more so than in custom reports. But that's a good question. Yeah. And what she's referring to is if we go up here into the Customize tab, we actually have options to create a dashboard. Let's see. So some of these are old dashboards that I don't use a ton. But in this case, right, so I have my most valuable content, which is, these are the most popular landing pages. And I think this is from organic search only, right? Let me take a look and see. No, so I haven't filtered it. So this is just the most popular pages on the site. But I can instantly pull this up and see what the top 10 are, right? Or I could create a custom report and go deeper. But it's just a lot cleaner, right? It doesn't have all those extra numbers, but I can see, okay, this is sessions, this leads to goals. Okay, that's valuable for me. Yeah.
Can you explain what Google Tag Manager is?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the question was about Google Tag Manager and what is Google Tag Manager. So Google Tag Manager, so we talked about in our case, you take that snippet of JavaScript code and you put it in the header of your website, right? And then you're done. But a lot of times, especially if you're using an e-commerce store or you have a big website, you have a lot of different tags, a lot of different snippets of code you're putting on the site. So in our example, we took the GA code, right? And then we just put it right here in the head of the site. Okay, so that goes right here. What Tag Manager allows us to do is it allows us to build a container. So then we take the Google Analytics code and we put it in this container. Then we take our Facebook pixel, right? And we put it in this container. We take any of our DoubleClick and we put it in this container. Then what we do is then we embed this container in the head, right, of the website. Now, we do that because then I can make changes to this container without actually having to change any code on the website. Okay? Does that make sense? So I can, if a developer comes to me and says, hey, we're actually going to start using Hotjar because we want to use heat maps, or we want to use Google Optimizely code, or Google's new Optimize A/B testing code, I can just, without talking to a developer, without getting access to the site, I can just go in and I can add it right to this container, and now my code is on that site. Okay? That's basically all it is, right? Because it allows you to take your Google Analytics code and any other codes, embed them in a container, then put the container on the site, so that you don't have to have any WordPress knowledge or any access to the CMS in order to be able to change the codes.
Is that how you recommend setting that? If you're using Facebook Pixel?
If you're just using Facebook Pixel and Google Analytics, I would probably just put both the codes in. If you get more than that, or if you're making a lot of changes, or if you're working with a third party, then it makes sense to get into Tag Manager. Tag Manager's significantly more complicated to set up, to figure out what events you want to track, and it can wreak havoc sometimes. It's another layer of complexity. All right, so if you're just using Facebook Pixel and Google Analytics, I would just copy both those into the head. If you start getting more than that, then it makes sense to think about some sort of Tag Manager solution. Yeah.
Do you know if it helps with tracking UTM tags?
So UTM, that's a good question. Let's actually talk about, do we end right on the hour? Or?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You can keep going.
Let's talk about UTM codes. I think this is a good direction that we can go if that's okay. So Google tracks, as you see, a lot of this automatically, right? So they tell you when traffic comes from Google, but sometimes you actually want to track things specifically. You want to tag something so that when somebody clicks on a link, right? Maybe it was an email campaign, right? And you want to know that that person came from email and maybe came from that particular newsletter. So Google allows you to input manual data, right? And you do this by adding basically a bunch of junk to the link at the top. So let me find their UTM builder. Not University of Tennessee, thank you. Google UTM. So what they do is they allow you to have a campaign builder. So in this case, actually a cookie, so it has the stuff in there from last time. So let me zoom in a little bit and I'll turn the light off again. So in this case, say that I had a link that I wanted to paste on social media, right? I'm going to send it out on my Twitter, but I want to be able to track traffic from that link. So the first thing that I do is if you Google campaign URL builder or UTM codes, it'll take you to this page. Okay? And it'll show you, and we have a bunch of options here. So the first one, in order to tag these links, is you take the link where you want them to end up, right? And you drop it in here at the top. Okay? That's simple. Okay? Now we start adding details that we want to track. So this is data that we want to take, and when anybody clicks on that link, we want to override Google Analytics defaults and say, okay, the source is actually Twitter. I don't care what you think the source is. I am telling you, that Google Analytics, that the source is Twitter. Okay? The medium, banner, email, right? CPC, cost per click, PPC, pay per click. And then I can add a unique campaign name. So what I do then is I fill in this information, and then it gives me this really ugly URL right here. Okay? But what it does is it attaches these UTM parameters. So let's go ahead and do this. So if I copy this, and I'm actually going to go back here, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm now back in analytics. I'm going to go back into real time. And overview maybe. Traffic sources. Yeah, okay. So let me show you. So I took that link we just created that I tagged with my own parameters. And I'm going to drop it in here. Right? And I'm going to fire this, and let's see what happens. Wait for the code to load. Yeah. There we go. Come on. There it is. So it took those parameters that I input, right? The source of Twitter, the medium, I said, cost per click or pay per click, and I put that data in here. For those of you that use MailChimp regularly, maybe for your business or for a client, there's the option to tag the links with the campaign name. So what it's doing is it's adding UTM codes to all the links automatically. If you use Hootsuite or Buffer, it does the same thing, right, when you give it that option. So this allows you to manually take the data and put it in so that then when I pull a report and I want to see everything from source Twitter, that anybody who clicked on that link is going to show up in that bucket, right? And I can set these, Twitter's just an example, right? I can set these to whatever I want, okay? But I'm now telling Google where the source is. I'm overriding their defaults using UTM codes. So good question. As long as you have the analytics code on the site and the links will, and you tag the links properly using their tool, it'll fire. It doesn't matter if you're using the Google Tag Manager or if you're just using regular analytics code. So, yes?
I'll throw that. That's a good use too if you're like, if you have to have your data on someone else's site for some reason, like for example, like a WordPress plugin.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like our add-ons dashboard inside of a plugin that could be on anybody's site. And if they click on it, we have a little UTM code that says
Yeah.
they came from, you know, this add-on on this page and stuff. So it's good for those kind of like off-site links that you don't really have control of where they're at.
Yeah, good point. I'll tell you one little hack that I did with this one. I did I was helping out marketing with a major event here in Fort Collins. And what we did is we bought a domain for the event, a short domain. And we put that domain on every single one of our flyers, all of the print advertisement that went out. Then what I did is I forwarded that domain to the event page, which actually lived on our main website, but I tagged the UTM link. And so it allowed me to, broadly speaking, actually track traffic that came from offline. Right? So if somebody entered that particular URL, they were instantly and seamlessly redirected to the event page. But I actually then could track and see, okay, all the events we're doing, how many people actually enter the code and come to the website? And I could see that. So that's one little hack that I do if you're doing a lot of offline advertising, is you can actually buy a separate domain or have a short URL or something like that, tag the link, and then send it over. If you sell anything on Instagram, right, you can create a bit.ly link or a shortened Google link, and you can drop that into your Instagram and make sure you tag that as Instagram. Right? A lot of e-commerce stores do that.
And then you can see them under your audience and then all campaigns, right? All
Yeah.
campaigns.
Yep. So it'll show up under your campaign view, so you can go to acquisition campaigns actually, or what I do sometimes is I just search for campaigns and go to all campaigns here. Right. And so in my case, I don't have any active campaigns, but if I go back to February, there might be a couple email campaigns. Right. So in this case, these were just a couple email campaigns. Yeah, I don't do paid advertising on this site, so. But yeah, it would show up there, right, based upon whatever I tagged it with. So.
Would you prefer the method that you showed us for tracking that thank you page over setting up a UTM code?
Yeah, so to be clear, they work in conjunction, right? They're not mutually exclusive. You want to have a goal set up to ultimately know if they converted, right? A UTM code will never tell you if somebody converted. They will just tell you how they got to the website, right? Once they're on the website, then we want to set up a goal. So in an ideal world, then you could tag all of your links, right, offline, and then you have your goal conversion. So somebody comes, then they're tagged with the UTM code. Then they visit a few pages, then they convert. Then I can pull a report that says, okay, out of the 50 people that came from offline, in our case, 5 of them filled out the form and converted. So that's how those two things work together. So ideally, you want both of them. Okay. What I will tell you is don't necessarily go overboard with tagging. And a lot of the tools that you use, like I said, Hootsuite, Buffer, email, will do it automatically. But where it is really useful, to Jeremy's point, is if you have a link that you have an opportunity to put on somebody else's blog or offsite, and you want to track referrals, it's really, really useful. Cool. Other questions?
Do you have like a checklist or anything that you go through with every client to make sure certain things are set up, or is that kind of custom for every client?
It's a little custom. For me, the checklist is code on the site, goals or conversions, and dashboards. Right? Those are the baseline that I always set up. Even dashboards are a little more custom. I didn't talk about actually how to create those. It takes a little more time. But yeah, goals get the code on the site, set up conversions. If you do that, you'll be good. That way, if and when, even if they're not using it right now, right? But I'll have companies that will come in and they'll hire me, right, to help out with their marketing. Well, the first thing I come in and I see, okay, what have you done and what's worked, And so even if you just set up the basic goals, it gives me data, right, or somebody like me, data to work with. So I'm not going from square one. Otherwise, we waste 30 days collecting data that we otherwise would have had, right, before we could start a new campaign. But so, you know, in a nutshell, those are kind of the checklists. And obviously, it's a little more complicated depending on the project. But
Is that kind of your smallest unit of measurement, is 30 days of data to start making decisions?
yeah, typically I look at a month. But it depends on the amount of data. SEO, it always takes about a month at least. Sometimes it takes 3 months or 6 months to really tell what's working. Pay-per-click, it depends on their budget, right? I could send, you know, 1,000 visits in a day, right, if they're willing to spend the money, and I can make really good decisions on a day's worth of data. So, it depends on the channel as well. But,
Hey, Tyler,
yes?
you mentioned earlier you do seminar courses on this stuff.
Yeah, so I teach a course. I'm not scheduled to teach it for a while because I'm just too busy right now, but I teach a course here at Digital Workshop Center. I actually have some YouTube videos I basically on how to build dashboards and stuff like that. I can share them in the link. And I'm supposed to. I think this is screen capturing, so I'll, if it's okay with Jeremy, I'll put it on Vimeo when we're done, and you guys can go back through if you want to watch it and review it too. So, yeah. But.
You can put a link, but put a little UTM in there.
Okay, I'll make sure I try it.
Less than.
We'll probably post it in the meetup group. I'll host a video on our website, or I'll put it on YouTube or something, and I'll add a link. Yeah, back to that. So, also with UTM codes, if you have a YouTube video in the description, you know you're using it for promotion. Again, tag that link so you know where traffic's coming from. But, cool. Well, you guys, if you do the stuff we talked about, you will be so far ahead of most business owners. You know, I mean, there's always more. We can always go deeper on this, but what I try to do is distill the most important parts, right? So get the code installed, set up conversions, and look at those core reports. You'll have a much better idea of what your website's doing and whether or not your marketing is working, right? And it'll help you make decisions. So that was kind of my goal. Hopefully it gives you something to walk away with. So.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so before we go, does anyone have any kind of generic, not related to Google Analytics WordPress questions?